Hi everyone, I'm Sam Paonessa, professional artist. Welcome back to the tutorials, the painting tutorials, and I'm here in my rec room studio. Um, for those who've been watching my YouTube demos, thank you for watching and for liking. We've had some good comments, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. I wanted to point out today um, the demo that we're doing and the filming we're doing is during the pandemic COVID-19 crisis, and there's a lot of social and physical distancing happening. It's quite a historic time, and during this time it's a bit difficult, I think, for a number of people, just getting down, and I wanted to do this partially to help people stay creative, to be inspired, and it's important that we do that as artists, that we continue to paint and keep inspired even during some dark days like we're experiencing. Today we're going to be looking at an Old Masters palette. I've got a variation of the Old Masters limited palette that I'm going to be sharing with you. We have my palette here of paints and brushes and palette knives that I'll be using today for the demo, and I wanted to just mention some of the brushes I'll be using. The pointed rounds, there's some Sable Winsor Newton brushes from various sizes. Also some Rosemary brushes. Rosemary are a really great brush I really enjoy using. And there's flats, some filberts, and then I've got some larger scrubby brushes that I use for background, and then a little assortment of palette knife sizes, small, medium, and large, and then my silicone handheld shaper. I may be using my other mini shaper with the angled head. I often use that for my painting as well, and I may get into the brayer. It's another tool I like to use, and if I do use it, I will certainly be showing it to you. So the colors for my Old Master palette, I've started with Yellow Ochre, Cad Yellow Deep, Naples Yellow, Venetian Red, Transparent Oxide Red, Ultramarine Blue, Raw Umber. So I'm going to show you how I begin here with mapping out the values, and this is such an important part of the painting, is to establish the correct values in their place, but also having the proportions. So I'm using a 1/3 principle, a golden section principle here. So a principle of thirds. So I've got my top third to the 2/3, and then this is my area where pretty much my focal point will be. So where that 1/3 and 1/3 intersect is known as the golden section. So I'm going to drop in my values here. So here I've used my transparent red oxide just to draw the shape of the creek here. So again, I want this to be quite loose, so I'm just going to use the rag to keep it nice and loose. And again, I want to build up my value to make sure I'm getting the right darker values up front. So I'm going to be moving now to using a raw umber. Okay, so here's where we're establishing our values. Now, of course, that's the important part about getting the feeling of distance, is getting these values correct. So we need to do that. And the rule of thumb for our landscape is our darker values are up front, up here, and they recede as you go back into the background, into the distance. So I want to make sure that these values are stronger than my values back here. Now, however, there are times when we do break the rules and we want to make a more dynamic focal point. So we do want to accentuate this area of the focal point. So this is where we will probably maybe push some of that and break the rule a little bit as far as value. So I'm going to make sure that I want to get some strong value around there too. Now, the other important part at this stage is keeping, especially for oils, and you want to keep things thin so you can layer your color. At this stage, I want to start working in the sky. I want some time for the sky to dry a little bit, because then I'm going to have to add my trees. So I need a bit of time for drying. So at this point I'm going to start with a little hint of some cloud color and then get into the sky. So I'm going to start with a little bit of my Venetian red and white. And as you can see, it is very light. I'm just applying that with my palette knife, and that's a very good value for my cloud. Because it's so light comparative to the light of the background tint, there doesn't seem to be much color. It looks very white. But surprisingly, there is quite a bit of Venetian red in it, and it'll be more noticeable as other colors are added. As of now, all we've been doing is putting down a lot of warm color. So let's see what happens when we put some cool color down. So I'm just mixing a little bit of the ultramarine blue with a little bit of white. This is for some of my water for the creek. And I think I'm going to decide, I think I've made the decision to add my cerulean blue. So I'm going to do that now, because I think my sky color is going to need that. Look at that. That really pops, doesn't it? Now the color on the palette doesn't look that strong. It's because there's so much warmth here that the blue really pops. I'm going to take a big filbert soft hair brush and I'm just going to spread some of this around. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to thin it out, but I want that subtle color. You get a very nice soft edge effect with that big soft brush. At this point I'm going to establish some darks in my foreground, again using the raw umber and ultramarine. So I want those nice strong darks up front. I'm just lightening a little bit as I go back. So along the shore here we have a little bit of the bank, the reflection from the bank. Just slightly lighter. I'm going to get my flat brush here. Now I'm going to soften. I want to soften some of these trees back in this area and push them back. Again, I have to layer my color here, so I'm going to take a little bit of my transparent red oxide, a little bit of the ultramarine, just to darken it up. Again, I want to create the texture, that brushy texture. So the pressure I'm using on this brush is important to create that feeling of grass. And again, the layering is important, as I pointed out before. So I'm pressing, I'm getting varying brush strokes and values, and then eventually I'm going to be building up. At this point it's more transparent. You can see that I can see the tinted underpainting coming through, which is good. We want that. And then eventually we'll get into more opaque grass forms. Okay, so we're seeing how our layers are starting to happen. But it's important, as I said, to get our values right, or else that won't happen, or else we won't see that sort of distancing happening. So again, thin layers. So this is my underpainting to get the darker, to get my my lights to lay on those darks.